All right, if you're in an accounting information systems class, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down one of the most fundamental processes that pretty much every single company runs on, the purchase to pay cycle, or as you'll hear it called all the time, P2P.
So let's kick things off with this quote, because it really gets to the heart of what we're talking about. This isn't just about paying bills and cutting checks. No. Think of it as a strategic balancing act. It's where a company's cash flow meets its actual day-to-day operations. You get this right, and you've got a seriously efficient machine. But if you get it wrong, well, that's when you start burning through cash and gumming up the works.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the big picture. Then we'll break the process down into its main parts. After that, we'll look at the cornerstone control, the three-way match. See how technology has totally changed the game, and then wrap up with the really important stuff, the risks and controls you absolutely need to know about for your career.
Okay, first things first. We have to understand why this cycle is so incredibly vital to a company's health. You can think of it as the engine that turns cash into everything the business needs to run. We're talking everything from raw materials for a factory to the laptops for the marketing team. And really, at its core, it all boils down to this simple give-get exchange. The company gives cash, and in return, it gets the stuff and the services it needs to operate and, actually make money. This flow is happening constantly and at a huge volume, which is exactly why managing it well is not just important, it's critical.
Now think about it. In almost any business today, we don't pay for things the second they arrive at our door. We buy on credit, right? And that little gap, that time lag between getting the goods and actually paying the bill, splits the whole cycle very neatly into two distinct phases. And this slide lays it out perfectly. First up, you have the physical phase. This is all about getting the actual stuff. It's the logistics, the ordering, the receiving, checking to make sure it's what you asked for. Then, and only then, once the company has the goods in hand and the invoice arrives, do we move into the financial phase. And that's the accounting side, approving that bill and finally sending out the cash.
So how do we connect those two phases, the physical and the financial? Well, bridging that gap is probably the single most important internal control in this entire cycle. It's a concept you're going to see again and again in your classes and in the real world, the three-way match.
This is the million-dollar question. If you're designing an AIS or you're an auditor, this is what you have to solve for. How do you make sure the company isn't paying for things that never showed up or paying a bill that's way too high? Without a rock-solid control right here, a company is just wide open to huge losses, whether from simple mistakes or even fraud. So, how do we do it? The answer is by lining up these three key documents. Before the accounts payable department even thinks about sending money out the door, they perform the match. They take the purchase order, that's what we officially ask for. They match it to the receiving report, that's proof of what physically arrived at the warehouse, and they match that to the supplier's invoice, which is of course the bill. If all three agree, boom, payment is approved. Now, of course, the way we perform that three-way match has been completely revolutionized over the years. The journey from old-school manual paper-based systems to the integrated IT platforms we have today has totally re-engineered this whole process.
And this table just nails the transition. We've gone from people literally walking stacks of paper from one desk to another, to real-time data shared across the entire company in a centralized system, like an ERP. But look at the row for human activity. This is the key for you. The work has shifted from mind-numbing, repetitive data entry to being an analyst who only focuses on the exceptions, the times when the system flags a problem. That requires a totally different skill set.
And honestly, you can't overstate how massive this shift is. It's not just a little efficiency boost. It is a complete operational transformation. It fundamentally changes what an accountant or an AP clerk even does all day. And for a real-world example of that impact, look no further than Ford. By using a technology called Electronic Data Interchange, or EDI, they completely re-engineered their process. The real genius move was getting rid of the invoice altogether. They just started paying their suppliers automatically based on what the receiving doc scanned into the system. And the result, their AP department went from 500 people down to 125, just like that. Okay, so all of this brings us to our final and maybe most critical section. Because you have massive amounts of cash and valuable assets flowing through this cycle, designing and implementing effective internal controls is absolutely everything. It's all about managing risk. And these are some of the biggest threats you have to guard against.
I mean, you've got everything from somebody ordering stuff the company doesn't need, to inventory getting stolen, to simple but really costly data entry mistakes. A well-designed accounting information system is built to anticipate these threats and has controls in place to shut them down. Here you can see how the physical, old-school controls and modern IT controls work hand in hand. Let's take theft of cash, or misappropriation. The classic physical control is segregation of duties. Simple idea. The person who approves payments should not be the same person who can actually sign the checks or send the wire. A modern IT system backs that up with an automated three-way match and role-based access controls, making sure the system itself enforces that separation of power.
So what's the goal of all this? The key phrase, which comes from the COSO framework, and you will hear that term a lot, is to provide reasonable assurance. Notice it doesn't say absolute certainty. It means having a high degree of confidence that the company is meeting its goals when it comes to effective operations, accurate reporting, and following the law.
And that brings our explainer to a close, but I want to leave you with one final thought. We've seen the evolution from paper to platforms. The next wave is already here. AI automating tasks like the three-way match itself. So the question for you as the next generation of accountants isn't if your job will change, but how. Your role is shifting away from doing the matching to designing the systems that do it, analyzing the complex exceptions, and providing the kind of strategic insight that for now only a human can. Thanks so much for tuning in.